Welcome back to the Tailosive EV podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can still hear us because we're missing a mic today.
Okay. All right. So the show's over now. Thanks for spilling the bad dad jokes. Appreciate it, Drew.
Oh, he did it. Yep. All right. Welcome back to the Randy and Nick show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
He did it.
He did it. How dare you?
That was... it sounds like I had that planned for a while, but it literally just in the last 2 seconds, I was like, that would be good.
That was amazing.
It was good.
Miss you, Mike.
Miss you.
Hope he has a safe journey on his road trip.
Is he using his
wherever
Model
he
Y?
Lots of driving. I don't think so. I think they're towing something that needs...
No. Then how on earth will
So,
they have
yeah,
their
he's-
5-star safety rating?
They don't.
Oh,
They just
no.
don't. Yeah. Guess we'll just die.
Stay safe out there, Mike.
Man, I
Jeez.
shouldn't joke about that. That'd be sad.
That'd be very sad.
Anyway, we are just a couple days away from the next earnings call. So I'm curious if you guys have thoughts, predictions on how the Q2 went, or timeline updates they're going to provide, or any interesting things you're looking forward to in particular, or
Best
do you think it'll be business as usual?
sales ever. And
Oh, yeah. That's true.
and then probably, man, come on, Cybertruck news. Cybertruck news.
Yeah.
Nah.
Obviously.
No
Obviously.
Cybertruck news.
I'm giving up on the update idea
Yeah.
after his replies.
I'm going to have to agree
Don't
with
worry,
you, Drew.
somebody's got to have hope.
Rebellions
I
are
believe
built
they're
on
still
it.
working on it.
Oh, yeah, they're totally
but-
still working on it, but it's not coming
But
out
I
anytime
think-
soon.
Elon is every time someone asks for an update, he's like, it's the same.
It's
He
the
just keeps replying that it's the same as the
Speaking
old
of
one.
Elon,
So
though,
I'm guessing,
him being
yeah.
blunt about things, I gotta appreciate him just standing his ground about the Marquez video. He's like, nope, not changing it with the yoke.
Yeah. He did like the video, to be fair. He wasn't just saying the yoke's
Oh, yeah,
fine.
yeah, no,
but
he said
did
fair
say
cri-
fair
feedback,
criticism.
But hey, any
Yeah.
chances of full steering wheel? Nope, not a chance.
I know. I was kind of surprised by that. I think it says a lot on Tesla's part, because it probably says that they don't care about the S and X like sales. They're like, we've got enough. We've got orders to fill. We've got too many orders to fill, and we can't keep up. So if we lose some of you on the buttons and the yoke, oh well, don't buy our car. Buy something else then. And I like that mentality. I'm sad for the people that are really bothered by the yoke. I feel very lucky that I like
Yeah.
the yoke. I'm like
Likewise.
on the right side of history. I'm like, I think it looks awesome, and I think it looks really cool, and I would totally get used to it. And I did a fake yoke test on my car, and I got comfortable with it. And I even think people saying they hit the buttons on accident, I think you're steering wrong. I'll be the Steve Jobs of Tesla.
You're
steering
steering
it
it
wrong.
wrong.
There's a clear pivot point, because I've watched a lot of different channels that have taken delivery of the yokes now, and honestly, lots of people seem to like it after using it. And most of the people that hate it have not used it. And the people that have used it start to change their narrative a bit, because I know Marquez was the one originally when it first came out that was just like, that's weird, that's clunky. And then in his review, he did a good job. I liked the video because he found a way to agree with both parties. He found a way, because I was just reading the comments. I started the video and then I paused it for a minute because someone was on the phone. But I was looking through the comments, and there were a bunch of people like, yeah, I agree, the yoke sucks. Yeah, Tesla's trying to reinvent the wheel. I hate how Tesla's handling all this, and they should just let there be a full wheel. Tesla, you're stupid, you're dumb. But then I watched the video, and I was like, that wasn't really his narrative, though. He wasn't saying... He actually said he would keep the yoke. He just wants physical buttons.
Yeah.
He didn't like the capacitive buttons. And I was like, okay.
I'll go
Because
for
that's
that.
not how Marquez felt before he reviewed it. He was saying like the yoke is bad and it's complicated to turn, and he wants a full wheel option or whatever. And after review, by the end of the video, he's like, I'm going to keep driving this. I want to keep using it, and I want to adjust to the auto shift functionality in the software. And he liked it enough that he was willing to put up with the changes and try to relearn how to drive, basically. And I was like, yeah, he found a way to like agree with everyone somehow, which was cool. But I want to try it myself. Yeah, extreme centralism. And I think that the pivot point when you're doing those big turns just has to be at the bottom corner of the yoke and not at the top. Just when you're making the turn, you go from the bottom corner. That way your hand isn't glossing over the buttons. It's hard to describe without a visual, but I've basically watched several channels that have taken delivery do it, and they say they get very natural with it, and you're not accidentally hitting buttons and stuff. But it's certainly a learning curve. It's something that not everyone will get used to right away, but that's the thing. Tesla doesn't care. They're not trying to make this the most appealable vehicle in the world. They're just saying, as Tesla fans and as a Tesla, like probably from Elon's vision, he's like, this is what we like. Take it or leave it. And if you don't like it, there's going to be other EVs out there. But this is what we want to do. This is how we like our interiors. And I just love seeing that level of confidence and certainty with the design of it. It's the same thing as the Cybertruck, right?
If I'm being
Some of
honest,
you might not like this. We don't care.
I was just thinking about it. Full honesty, I don't care. I don't care because my Model 3 doesn't have it, so I'm not losing any sleep.
You got a wheel. Yeah, you're not losing anything.
I'm not losing anything, so I don't care. And I was thinking about, okay, all right, Cybertruck, if it gets that same yoke design as what's right now in the S, how I would do the turn is probably by holding it. Sorry for audio listeners, you're not going to understand what I'm describing, but if this is our sides right here, I would put my palm on the top left corner, that to rotate. That's kind of how I do it. I don't do it from the bottom when I make turns like that. I normally grab it from either here. It's always on the top side, and I use that as that motion depending on which direction. So the top end of the yoke is what I think how I would maneuver my big turns like that. But like with the truck. With the truck specifically, because that's I think the mass rollout where people will start getting the yoke. You have to really be doing very specific things on the truck. Like if you're hitching something on the back or whatever. Like there are certain turns you have to do. You're not just cranking that sucker anyway. If you're moving stuff like that, and if you're just driving the truck by itself, I actually feel kind of what Elon reiterated is that it's going to get better over time with software because input equals error, and it's going to hopefully be able to get to the point where if you have like the full self-driving package, whether it's subscription or what have you, that it's going to park itself. It's just going to get better at that. It has to get better at that if it's going to try to anticipate what gear you're going in based off of remembering how you're pulling into a spot or backing into a spot. So the AI has to already improve. So why not improve then the maneuvers of it as well? Because right now the worst part about any of this autonomy stuff is the self-parking part. That thing is a hot mess trash. So it has to get better. And maybe then all these turn things ain't really going to matter all that much. And if you're driving and you're doing all that stuff, there's no way you're doing this like at fast miles per hour anyway. So you're doing this, I'm picturing on the truck, if you're towing something, you're backing something in or what have you, that's going to require precision regardless. So I don't think placement of a yoke at that point is a deal breaker. Nothing more than, like you were saying, a learning curve. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, truly.
Yeah, I don't either. I think the biggest thing they could help the yoke on the Cybertruck would be a tight turning radius, which sounds like it will with the rear wheel steering. So if you don't have to turn it over and over to get into a tight parking lot to back out of, then that could make it a lot easier because you could do most of your turning just without going away from the two-handed 9 and 3 o'clock. So that will help. I'm not sure how much it'll help, but I do think that there's too many people writing it off before trying it.
Yeah.
I haven't tried it myself, so I'm one to talk, but I think that it's a little unfair to say something shouldn't be done or this is a mistake if you haven't tried it yourself. I mean, there's functional reasons to argue against it, and I understand a lot of people's frustrations because it doesn't really solve anything. This isn't
It just
fixing
makes
a
it
problem.
look cooler.
It just makes it look cooler, but I just happen to like the way it looks, so I'm like, if I have to learn how to drive differently, but I can have a way cooler interior, then I'll learn how to drive differently. And there's all kinds of learning curves with Teslas. This is just one of tons of things.
This is
as people
that's a very
make the
true
switch
statement.
to electric.
That's a very
There's
true
like the
statement.
door handles are different. The Cybertruck's going to have auto presenting doors, and you don't have a key anymore. You got to use your phone, and everything's on this one center display, and the design is different. Like, there's so many learning curves that come with a new car like this that throwing in the Yoke in there I don't think is asking too much, and I don't think it's a bad idea, especially because it doesn't seem to be hankering demand for the Model S or X. They're still selling like crazy. So if anything, adding a steering wheel is just going to cause orders to go even higher, which they can't meet. So I think it's gutsy. It sucks for the people who don't like it. I'll admit that. And I feel sorry for people who don't like it because at the end of the day, it is kind of a personal preference thing. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people aren't willing to compromise on that functionality. Fair enough. We all drive differently and we have different preferences. Some people like different colors. So if you don't like the Yoke, I feel bad for you. I'm sorry. But if you do like it,
When I
it's
drive,
pretty dope. It's
one
really
of the new
amazing.
habits that I kind of established with the Model 3 is when I drive, I naturally rest my hand bottom more, and the Yoke offers that. It's like a flat.
Yeah, you still got
I
that.
naturally rest
Yeah.
right there because I have now been conditioned to apply resistance when autopilot's happening. So it's more of a it's a more comfortable state having my hands like this, and I even think ergonomically it's good for your it's good for just overall posture with your limbs. Keep it right there and still have a little bit of a pressure because then you can rock the bottom part like this to apply the pressure, and that is now my new holding. But what Marquez brought up is also very true that like this is the textbook definition of how you should drive because it's the safest for you too. So I tried doing that anyway, but it's just I don't like having my arms like this. I like resting them, and that is the only part that matters for me. So when the Yoke becomes just 2 sticks like that, then we have a problem for me. Then I'll be like, yeah, go kick rocks. I'm not playing this game anymore. But right now, if I got to apply pressure, then it's on the bottom anyway. At no point am I ever grabbing the top and making turns like that. I normally don't touch the top unless I want to look cool. But what's cooler
Yeah.
than that? A Yoke.
The Yoke? Totally.
Yeah. I saw Golly from Hyperchange say it makes it feel more like a video game.
I bet it feels like I'm riding in the
like.
back of a Hummer or some type of like military grade. Just saying, get the 50 cal.
Yeah. Yeah. You're driving around like two hands. So.
It's
cool.
The Covenant are here.
I like seeing him.
Get those TIE fighters,
I like
Randy.
seeing that stand.
Yeah. I don't know. I obviously love the Yoke, and I've always kind of loved the Yoke ever since we first saw it with the Roadster. And I'm excited that it's coming to the Cybertruck, and I'm excited that people who have been using the Model S Plaid have enjoyed it. However, I kind of don't like the fact that there isn't just an option to add a wheel. You know, it could be $1,000 more, just
Yeah.
like extra,
Sure.
larger, fancier wheels or whatever. It's and I get why they're doing that, right? Because even back in 2016 or whatever, like Tesla wanted to start moving people away from the steering wheel. They made they've been Model 3 steering wheels a little bit smaller than the Model S's, and the Yoke's going to be even smaller steering area, and hopefully at some point we won't even need a steering wheel. Maybe we just have like a joystick controller like they have in an Airbus or whatever. But
That sounds kind of cool,
the
actually.
idea of just like reducing your need to input information into the car is much better than not. And then I know at some point, whenever FSD comes out in 2099 in 2 weeks, people will wish that they didn't have this big honking steering wheel that they have to get their
Right.
knees under. So for me, I'm a tall guy, right? Model 3, really
Yeah.
hard to fit in. And most of that's because the bottom part of the wheel is right where my knee needs to go. So I need to like adjust my
Right.
foot all the way down into the bottom of the footwell to make my knee short enough to get underneath the round part of the steering wheel,
Yeah.
and then I can pull it back. And that's the case with a lot of cars, you know, even if you get like a real small Ferrari or whatever, you know, even if you're a normal sized person, you can experience that problem. And I think just cutting off the bottom part of that steering wheel is going to make it feel like a ton more room in the cabin. You know, as a driver,
I've heard that. People were praising the Yoke for the knee room.
yeah, as a driver, when you're just driving down the highway, you know, A, not touching the steering wheel is great, but B, not having that steering wheel there is just going to be that much more convenient and easy to
Right.
to use, you know.
Yeah.
I agree. Options, I would not be against options. I don't think it would be the worst thing for Tesla to offer it.
What if it's just like a
in fact,
third-party company could offer it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can offer different
wonder if
rim
that's even-
sizes, I don't see that much of a different, because it's a piece that it just detached. Like if
Right.
the electrical parts are still the same, airbag is still going to deploy and it's all set up. That
Yeah.
part, unless I'm missing something, seems relatively easy to remedy. And like Nick said,
Sure.
if Tesla wants to push and promote Yoke, then say, hey, you get this regular one for $500 more or whatever, something, and that's something we'll just roll into your loan or whatever. Like people won't even think about it. But I don't feel like it's like a true electrical issue or something that would prevent some type of safety of the vehicle overall.
No. I think it all comes down to just manufacturing complexity. I think that's the majority. It's already probably very complicated getting these Plaid powertrains mass produced, and the paint and the rim options and the 3 interior colors and all that. It's already fairly complicated, and I bet the mass production of the S and X has all obviously taken longer than they thought, and it's ended up being a bigger project. My
Right.
guess is they started this project not thinking it would be that big a deal. Yeah, we'll just update the interior. We'll give it a new screen or something. And then they were like, but also do this. Also, we'll change that. Also, let's make it more aerodynamic than the Lucid. Also, let's rearrange some of the electronics in here. Also, let's make it charging fast. And by the end of it, they were like, oh my God, this is so much all at once, and we cannot keep up with. Then they announce it. They unveil the renders in January. There's all these orders. There's all this hype for it. And they're like, okay, now we got to actually make all these things. And it ends up taking way longer. And there's all these holdups. And now there's a temporary hold on all the Model S's on order. They stopped delivering them for some reason. We're not sure why. It could be a chip shortage thing or something. But there's just big back orders of them now. So you can imagine Elon having to deal with all that when in reality he's like, it's the Model S and X. This doesn't really matter. Who cares? We're more here to focus on Giga Texas, Giga Berlin, getting 4680s ramped, getting the Cybertruck out, getting the Semi done. There's so much bigger things on our plate, and we've wasted so much time trying to refresh the S and X. And then someone on Twitter goes, can we have a full wheel option? He's like, no,
No.
shut up.
Leave me alone.
We're done. Like, we don't need more complexity. Let's just get this over with. So I think that maybe when mass production is more smoothened out, it would make more sense to provide the option. If there's enough people still complaining about it, I also think there's a chance Elon and Tesla is going to see enough people get comfortable with it, and enough people say, yeah, actually, you get used to it. I can get comfortable with it. They're going to be like, it's not controversial enough. There's enough people buying the S and X. But I could see them wanting to add a wheel if S and X sales started to really plateau, and they had all these assembly lines up and no one was buying them. But I think even before that, they would probably start lowering prices, trying to make them more cost competitive, get them down to that 69,420 point they used to be at. So try lower prices. If that doesn't work, okay, here's a full wheel. So it could happen someday. I just think that because of all the priorities they have before that, they just don't care. And they're like, this is not the important car for Tesla. I mean, it's a cool flex. It's
a good looking
obviously
car. I want
it's
that
gorgeous.
car.
Oh yeah.
Me too. I'd love one. And it's a bummer for people who want the fastest car possible that also want a full wheel, because this there's nothing else
I just
that competes.
want that Plaid icon.
Oh, the badge.
That badge
Yeah.
is so cool looking. People was like,
Well,
oh,
you can't even
it's
get
going
that
on
if you
people
want-
like that grew on
wanted
me
it.
immediately.
Exclusive.
Yeah, the main thing I love about it that I would want brought to the 3NY is the 17-inch display.
Yeah.
I think that just looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Like Marquez always does a good job with his B-roll, and the footage he got of the interior, I was just like, oh man, that is such a good looking. I don't even need the display behind the yoke, but just the fact that you have a giant screen that is dedicated to the different windows that you can move around, and he talks about how responsive they are, and it feels a lot more
So
intuitive. I
clean.
was just like,
so clean.
that looks so nice. Yeah, I wouldn't even care as much if I could get the 17-inch display on the 3RY, but yeah.
Shout out for air cooling seats too. I'm glad that's a thing.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad that came back too.
That's good.
I just think beautiful vehicle, but for the sake of the mission statement and what the company needs to do, not that important.
Yeah.
You know, Tesla could have gotten by without refreshing these at all, and probably could have even gotten by with just getting rid of the S and X entirely. And I don't want that to happen. I love those vehicles and I want them to be there, but honestly, they have fairly little to do with the overall mission and what they need to achieve, and so I'm glad they gave them the love and attention they deserve.
Yeah.
But I think asking for the full wheel is probably too much as is. I see it as we were lucky enough to get a refresh at all.
Yeah.
This is true.
So-
Totally.
'Cause you
And
keep
Elon
thinking
said
he's
for a
trying to
while
phase it
that
out. He's
they
like,
weren't
we
going
don't
to be
need
doing
it.
those refreshes.
He did.
Go ahead,
He
Randy.
said they were building them just for nostalgic reasons. Go ahead, Randy.
Nick.
Go ahead, Randy.
I said go ahead, Randy. Sorry,
both
I don't
said
know
go
if
ahead,
I Starlinked.
Can you hear us, Randy?
Yeah, I can hear you. No, I was just saying that, like,
Oh, okay.
I was just concluding that Model S is not needed. That it's just strictly because it's like nostalgic. Like you said, it's nostalgic. It's the reason why we got iPods still. It's just it's a thing. They're not taking it seriously in that sense, and that's why I don't think Yoke is gonna go away. It's like this is fun. This is the rich man's car. It's not the eco.
Yeah.
It's not the vision car. It's the play car. The vision car is the 3 and the Y. Model S and X. Well, those are people with who pay somebody to do their taxes for them, type of a thing.
Yeah. They've got money.
Yeah,
So
they got
Tesla knows they'll charge whatever they need for them. They're probably not worried about lowering prices on them anytime soon either. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a shame, but definitely
Oh my
sitting
God!
up
Why are
there
they
in my
not lowering
dream car.
prices on the Y?
Whoa.
I know. That's frustrating too. But I don't think it's a supply chain thing personally. I'm curious if you guys disagree. Do
I
you think
think it's just
this is a
inflation.
sign
I'm sorry.
inflation?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everything's getting more expensive. Just go to the grocery store. I mean, why would you expect Tesla to keep the prices the same? I'm expecting iPhones to
Not
be more
necessarily
expensive this year.
inflation. I would say
Yeah.
it's maybe it was always an entry price. Like that was them keeping it cheap, and they planned on really increasing it to a more. It's a popular vehicle and demand, supply and demand, and all that. And it's like, well, you're gonna pay us. It's the same people why people pay $1,000 for a smartphone. If you're gonna pay us for it, then hey, we're gonna keep upping the price a little bit.
I think it's we're probably all touching on a little bit of it. It's probably a combination of inflation, parts being in short supply, and also demand is through the roof. I noticed this morning that for the long range Model Y, they don't even give you an estimated delivery time anymore, which I think is not a sign that it's a chip shortage. I think that has more to do with just there's so many people ordering them and they cannot meet demand as is. Before they took it away, it was saying like October. It was like it was so many months away as is. And my guess is so many people want this vehicle and so many people are willing to switch that as soon as the orders didn't stop after they rose the prices further and the estimated deliveries kept going further, once it was 54K, they were like, who cares? Let's just try to slow them down because the orders keep pouring in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Randy.
Nick, what was
You had
that?
a question.
What was what?
What was that? This big old thing I heard.
Oh, It's an ice machine in the area that I'm sitting in.
Oh man, I thought a rocket was going.
No, no.
I was gonna say they did that last episode.
Yeah.
I guess Randy didn't catch it, but it's okay.
They did.
People need their coffee.
You guys should watch my daily show. And you know all about that, Randy.
The Daily Show with Nick and Sweeney. I haven't heard of that.
The show I did.
John Stewart's gonna have some things to say about this.
I am very curious. My biggest questions, because I'm giving up on Cybertruck update, right? I'm gonna go ahead and assume we're not gonna get one until a month or two before deliveries.
Okay.
And the update won't be that big. Oh, side note. NHTSA is accepting comments for switching side view mirrors to cameras right now.
That's good.
So if you haven't done that yet, please submit a comment. There was a guy who did a Model 3 modification where he was able to remove his mirrors, and he saw like a 13% range increase. So please send the comments, because they might change the law by the time the Cybertruck comes out, and then they don't even have to worry about mirrors. So that there's some development in that regard. But my biggest wish that actually doesn't get changed via timeline is Tesla Semi. At the last shareholder deck, they said that they still expected Semi deliveries to be this year. And at this time last year, they had already announced they were delayed till 2021. So it's not a repeat of last year.
Yeah.
And if they keep that guidance in this shareholder deck, that means that they believe Semi deliveries are 5 months away, which to me is a big deal. Like, we've never been that close before. We've never had a timeline that obtainable. And now there's sources from Electric saying that, the Nevada line is almost done, that they've got drive axle production figured out and they're ready to begin. And I've just been so pumped for the semis to come out for so long. That's probably the biggest one, because they've had the same guidance for the past two shareholder decks. So if they keep it again, it's so close.
When were the semis announced? Was that in 2018?
2017.
2017. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But they announced them it was like end of 17. It was the same as the Roadster event. That's my favorite Tesla presentation ever, because they invited all the people just for the Semi, and then at the last second the Roadster pulled out, and that was game changing. So I like both those cars.
Neither of those vehicles
they
have come
said
out yet.
No. The Roadster's only slightly late. Semi is getting
Nick,
to the point of extremely late.
It's only 2021. It's only been 4 years.
They said when they unveiled it that the Semi would be done, or not done, but they would start production. I guess they didn't say deliveries, but production of the Semi end of 2019. So it's coming up on becoming the latest Tesla ever. The Model X is still the record holder, but I don't want the Semi to surpass that. So if they can deliver semis this year, then it will be on par with the X in terms of how late it was. So I don't need much. 1 or 2 semis would be fine. As long as there's a couple delivered by the end of the year, then it's out and it's working. And that's, I think, a big change for Tesla, because they've been doing pretty much the same sedans and crossovers ever since they started. And this would be the first time they're breaking into the trucking industry and showing electric vehicles are capable of more than just, family cars. So I think it's a big deal. And I really, really hope this is the year, but I've been disappointed before, so I don't know. We'll see.
Somebody hug this man. He's in so much. I've been disappointed.
I have the Semi on my desk right now. I'm looking at it. I'm just like, man, this would be
Don't
so
worry, Drew.
cool.
I too share
see
your
these driving around.
I lamented some disappointments as well. Still no
Nick has licked
updates
this.
to anything.
Not that thing you're holding. You don't need to sanitize it. Don't worry. But I licked the real one that Elon touched.
Oh, I wasn't going to sanitize it. But if there was no side view mirrors, range would be even better.
It would be.
So I'm hoping that law gets passed, because I'm so sick of the Semi not being
kind
out.
of a regulation.
I'm sorry?
I think both.
Okay.
It's like I'll send you that article or the subreddit. Someone removed the mirrors on their 3. You can take them off in certain states. Not all states allow this. Like California, I believe, requires at least one side view mirror, even after delivery. It's funny. You can take one off. That might help your range a little bit. But there are certain states where you can take them off entirely.
Hold on, I need to pull over and put on my mirror.
Here's a good question. If the law does get passed, do you think that the Cybertruck should add additional screens on the inside for those cameras, or should they just rely on the 17-inch display for everything?
One display.
Wow. Okay. So no side screens.
You
goes
you
against the
have
polls.
that in other vehicles. My friend has a Honda Civic, then he puts the blinker on, and on that one display, tiny display, then pops up a thing showing where he's about to merge to reveal the blind spot. It's completely doable. It's cheap, and it doesn't require any additional, adding anything to it. You can keep with whatever the design is and stuff. You don't have to try to or you have to clean up the interior anymore. Just have the one part of the screen just show you your blind spot, and then you're good. It's clean.
You think the visibility will be good enough, though? I just think about like towing and people wanting to see further back than maybe what the cameras are able to capture.
I get where you're going at with that, and I just don't feel it's the same as like the Semi. The Semi having multiple screens like that, and maybe once is to help with the things in the back like that. To me, that makes sense. I don't know if towing. Honestly, I'm not that much in the truck universe to understand how they're getting by with it now. So if they're making it work now, analog style with their own eyes, then I don't see it being that much more difficult utilizing what you're working with right there. Granted, I know you have mirrors at this point, so in substitution of the mirrors, I don't know. I don't think I have enough information to go off of that, but I just felt like it'd be cleaner, easier to update, truer to the prototype's form, even.
I think Tesla, according to, I ran a poll with about 3,300 people that voted, and 61% were choosing the additional side screens to go in there. 23% chose just show the cameras up on the main display. So I think that most people would rather have the additional screens, but I feel like Tesla is the type of company to not do that. They're the type to be like, nah, just turn on your blinker, and when you turn on your blinker, it'll show up on the screen, and you can look at the visualization, and it'll show you if cars are behind you and whatnot. And they know what people want, and they're not going to do that because it's too complicated or adds too much to the cost. And they probably want this Cybertruck to look as close as possible to the prototype. And with the exception of windshield wipers, this would be a really close way to get it spot on if they didn't add any extra screens and also were able to get away with no mirrors. It would be very, very close. So I think Tesla would rather not have the screens, but I personally wouldn't mind them. I think it's not a bad idea to always have it right to your left and right that you're used to, just like driving a normal car with mirrors being there and you're just screens. That way the range is better.
And by all means, yeah. Because I voted for the single screen, but I'm coming from the mindset of saving money. And I'm also coming from the mindset that I pull up my camera now in the 3 and I look at my both blind spots simultaneously all the time while I'm driving down the road, especially when I'm about to turn. I like to look at that stuff. So I'm already conditioned to look at the screen just to clear my blind spot. I'll have the blinker. I'll physically look quick, blinker, but then I'll look at the screen just to clear my blind spot.
That's good.
That's fair. That's a way to do it. Did you catch, Randy, did you catch this Lucid merger?
I didn't.
Contract?
Did your wife just make you a sandwich?
My wife made me a sandwich.
I was looking at my computer screen, and when I looked back, Randy was just holding
for my next trick. I'm going to make
he just made a sandwich appear out of nowhere.
You'll make a Cybertruck appear out of nowhere. Well, can you have her make me a
investor
sandwich?
guy? I wasn't sure.
Have I caught the Lucid? First of all, because I have to leave so promptly afterwards. I had to multitask and do all this stuff, so that's why it's here now.
That's fine.
Did I catch the Lucid merger? I did not know.
Okay. Well, basically, for those who don't know, Lucid Motors and Churchill Capital will combine to form a new company called Lucid, and a bunch of people. I guess they were asking for all the shareholders to vote on this because Lucid wanted to become in charge of everything, but Churchill wasn't sure, and then they basically extended the voting period and were like, everyone, please vote, please vote, please vote. And then they voted, and it sounds like they'll be trading under a new official Lucid ticker and everything. But I just think it's funny that that's probably more development in Lucid's territory than the actual car. They've got more growth in the stock status than the status of deliveries, because apparently after their last few updates and shareholder decks, they've been saying, like, we want to retain guidance for 2023 and 2024.
But you're merging?
But they don't want to talk about this year or 2022. So there's a lot of people thinking we won't even get deliveries this year.
Wow.
But based on their current vocabulary,
So
they're
all this
choosing.
merger just to nothing. Just it's nothing.
Yeah. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think they're evil. Some people think they're like Nikola and scamming people. I think there's a difference between like malicious scamming people and just being incompetent. You know, there's a difference between intentionally trying to sell people on something that you clearly don't have and straight up lying versus thinking you'll be done with something by a certain time and it actually takes longer than you think. For example, full self-driving. I don't think Elon and Tesla are intentionally lying at Autonomy Day and telling people something they know isn't true, but I do think that they assumed too much and they thought it would be easier than it ended up being. And I think Lucid's probably doing something very similar. They thought getting this vehicle out and mass producing it was going to be easier, and they thought they had all the supply chains ready, and then it turned out to not be so easy.
Yeah.
But I do agree with some suspicion of like how exactly they're going to get this vehicle to over 500 miles of range and yet not have a much larger battery than the Model S. And I don't know. There might be too many ambitious claims on their end, and I wish them the best, but go ahead.
Which one do you think will be compromised first? The price, the range, or the release date?
Definitely release date.
Okay.
For sure. Because that one's already been compromised several times.
I mean, okay, but like they'll push it back to 2036 to hit the kilowatt hour and the battery range.
That's funny.
You know,
That's funny.
I'm trying to figure out what would look worse. You know, the companies, including Nikola, seem to be pretty good at saying, we just need a little more time. We're ironing out the kinks. And Tesla's
Rivian?
guilty of this too. Or Rivian, yeah. They're pushing things back. I just watched the video. RJ posted a video of the R1S going up a real steep hill. It's cool. But I'm like,
was that
they
played
keep
backwards?
thinking
and was
they're
it a pusher
close.
just rolling down the hill?
If that's played backwards, that's impressive how slowly they got that car to go down that hill. That's impressive. But I just think that a lot of these EV companies, including Tesla, think things are closer, think things are simpler. So then they get close to their release date and then realize, oh, wait, we have a lot further to go. And then they push it back further. And Lucid's done that for several years now. And I think they could probably get away with still doing that for several more years of just like, well, we just really want to iron out the quality control, and we really want to figure out these. We need to make some fine adjustments a year later, 2 years later. Well, we just want to figure out those fine adjustments and really, you know, I think they could get away with that for a while because they know at the end of the day it's probably easier to delay something than it would be
to recall a faulty product.
To recall or to deliver a product with far worse specs.
Right.
I think that's also a bad look. Is if they kept saying 500 mile range, 500 mile range, and then they come out and they're like, actually it's 380, which is good too. You know, that covers most driving. They're right, but you know, it destroys a lot of the weight they had to their promises. So do
you think, Drew, was after Tesla's success with the Model 3, and we saw the likes of Nikola and Rivian, and Lucid has been around for a little while, but do you think after the success of the Model 3, we saw too many EV startups project too optimistically in order to be the quote Tesla killer in the market and kind of gain that media hype. Because I feel like right now we're sitting here in middle of 2021 and really Tesla is the only EV only automaker producing cars at scale. And we've had these companies around for years, 5 years for some of them. And I get it. It's a really hard problem. I get that. But my question is, do you think they might have oversold it just based on the hype of the Model 3? Like, oh, wow, Tesla was able to do this, so we should be able to do that too. Not realizing how difficult it was.
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think, for the most part, yes. I think that before you've climbed the mountain, it probably seems more achievable. Mm-hmm. Before you go up a hill or before you go to the gym, you think working out or achieving a big, weight loss thing. It's like, oh, I can do that. I'm going to get all this. I'm going to get together. I'm going to have a game plan and I'm going to do that. And then you start doing it and you're like, oh my God, this is hard. This is way more difficult than we thought. So I don't think they were necessarily lying. Some probably were more like Nikola, where they were just straight up rolling things downhill.
I think they probably could have. Like they were thinking they could, right? And
yeah. They believed in themselves. They weren't lying.
But there was just too much hype after the Model 3.
I definitely think, not just the Model 3, I think Tesla in general, because Rivian was around long before the Model 3 too. They were, I think, founded in 2011. So it wasn't just the Model 3, but it was Tesla as a whole, I think, when they started with the Roadster and they started with the Model S, that the auto industry was still not convinced that electric was the future. And the narrative was very different back then. And I think people forget that. In hindsight, it becomes very obvious. But in the moment, people were still unsure, like, okay, there's batteries. Okay, there's hydrogen. Okay, there's cleaner gas or something. There's all these crazy theories of what the future of automotive was going to be. And no one was really sure because Tesla was burning through cash and they weren't really that profitable. So people were like, well, I guess you could try to make an all-electric brand, but that's not going super well for them. But after Tesla started scaling production and delivering all these vehicles, it suddenly became abundantly clear to all these different startups, okay, it can be done. It is possible to do it profitably. You can scale production and actually build a, valuable company out of this. And before Tesla, it wasn't really known. It was already hard enough to start a car company, let alone an electric car company. And all Tesla and Elon has basically done is proven to people there is a way to do it. So now the narrative in the automotive industry has changed to, when are you going electric? What are your electric options? How does this car compete with Tesla's car? And how does now all these Rivian and Lucid companies, I think, are getting a lot more attention and people buying into their stock because they see how well Tesla did and they think, okay, how do I get in on the early days here? Because Tesla's successful, so that means other EV brands are going to be successful too. And I don't think that's necessarily true, but you're right. They very much overestimated how hard that would be. And I think that people probably try to think to themselves, Elon's not that influential. He just found the right batteries in the right design and knew how to throw it together, and other people will figure that out. There will be other design companies and other brands will be able to keep up with that. And I don't think they truly realized how genius not just Elon but the company as a whole is, and how smart they were able to not just produce a car but profitably produce a car, and how long that took them and how much long nights and dedication Elon had to give to make that possible. And also, people, I don't think, appreciate the manufacturing of Tesla enough, of how they've been able to simplify things and how much cheaper it probably is to build something like a Model 3 or Y versus the competition, which more parts and more complicated interiors. Like, they just think that's a style. It's like, Teslas are boring. It's a basic style. It's like, no, that directly allows for the battery to be better. And it allows for the range to be higher because they get to put that money towards better things. And I think Tesla did a really great job at making a cheap interior feel premium. Like, I bet it's really, really cheap to make those interiors compared to others because they just go all in on the software.
Glass and wood and
right.
metal and It's just one piece.
And all the
Yeah.
vents
Elegant.
and knobs and dials, and it's simple. And people just think, okay, well, that's the style they chose with. But that design was very intentional so that they could try to turn a profit on these vehicles. And I just don't think other people have clicked with that. They just think, oh, he found the batteries at the right time and then scaled up production. And all these other startups are like, okay, well, we can do that and we can do that. Now that they're getting into it, they're probably going to appreciate what Elon did a lot more, because they're realizing, man, this is complicated and there's a lot of steps to this. And I think that over time, more of them will start to borrow more Tesla traits when they realize, oh man, we really need to simplify
I think Tesla
this.
made it
We
look
need to...
easy, and even Elon's like,
They did.
Don't come here and work. Don't work here because this is not easy. But they didn't believe him.
That's the term. They made it look easy.
They did.
That's the main reason. They announced several vehicles and they were late on a couple, but they over delivered on the range, and the prices were a bit higher than they thought, but the demand was there and the charger network was there, and they, from the outside, it feels like it's not that big of an accomplishment because you're seeing all these other startups with prototypes and drive around. But when you start looking at the numbers of how many vehicles are being produced, you realize that it's not even close. This is not competition. This is not an alternative. This is like, it's not out yet. Whereas Teslas are out driving and being used. So you're right. Overestimated. Not easy.
Tesla has the advantage. It's both. It's a disadvantage as well, but they have the advantage. I'll talk about the good first, of being first to these things, because there's no reference point. There's just, here's our vehicle. So when they over-delivered with range, well, they only over-delivered by their own standard of what they initially said, but there was no reference point before that. If they would have said Model 3 is going to come out with 250 and that's the max and that's what you're going to work with, we would have been like, oh, okay, that, because we can't associate another reference point to that.
And they said 215.
And they said 215.
To set the record
so if they
straight.
said, and it came out to 250, you would have been like, this is great. And now we're going over 300.
Exactly. Yeah.
And people are like, well, so now it's easy for these other companies to be like, well, we also can offer blah, 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 blah. It's easy for you to say it after the fact, but like these guys were the ones doing it from the offset. The disadvantage of being first is that you're going to be late on a lot of things, and they're going to try to hold it against you with Semi, the X, the Roadster, Model 3, production hell, as they called it. All these things that was kind of plaguing the company at some point or another, because they're the first to it, so they don't have a reference point to it. They're just kind of making it up as they go, as us in life, you know? And it was easy in the moment back then for people to crap on them, to be like, yeah, you know, this is why electric vehicles aren't the future, because even Tesla, it's easy for you to sit there and say that when you haven't done nothing. But then after they do it, and now they get moderately successful and then become very successful, it's easy to, after the fact, look back and be like, well, look at all this groundwork. They've been doing this for so long, but now they have all that time ahead of everybody else, and everyone else is playing catch up, because you could sit there and criticize, especially the legacy automakers. You could do that for so long, like, this is how it's going to be, and then when it works, it's like, oh crap, we got to do something about it. But it's a double-edged sword, but that's what makes them so valuable, because we can say what we want about them, about their trajectory on doing certain things and timelines and deliveries, but I think one thing that we can all agree on, not just us three, but people listening to the show and people who are observing the space as a whole, is that people can say that if like Tesla will persevere, they have perseverance, they will push through the mud to try to make something happen. And so when Tesla says something, I might question timelines, I might question efficiencies of it, but I don't question execution. I don't question that it won't happen. It's more of
because
their
they have track record.
So it's, well, yeah, they're when they say we're gonna do this, I believe it. It's just the when, how.
2 weeks.
But it's not the what. The what is shown that they can make it happen. That the early showing of FSD, what it could be like, and the guy just hands right there on his lap doing his thing.
Yeah.
Like that right there was like, oh, this is the future. This is happening. I don't question that. It's, and I don't think anybody does. So, it's interesting because everything will always be compared to Tesla because they're the first. Just like everything's compared to Bitcoin because that was the first. Most things is compared to iPhone because that was the first full screen phone. Things just, when you're the first to something, you're going to be compared to everything else, and it'll be easy for them to nickel and dime everything and split hairs and be like, well, look at that and all that stuff. But big picture things, you're going to be remembered for having that vision first. Good on them. I don't know.
I'm glad they exist.
I don't know about these other companies. Their track record, not because I doubt their efficiencies. I don't know how anybody can solve these problems that they have with production and realizing that they're overpromising without having the same capital as like Tesla got on the offset. I don't have that issue with Ford. I know Ford's going to knock it out because they will do it just out of principle. Here's our truck, and they have the capital for it. They have the infrastructure to do it. I don't doubt Ford's effectiveness or efficiency with getting this Lightning out. But all these other startups, everybody that is post Model 3 in my mind, that like, oh, now they're taking it seriously. I don't know how they can overcome it because it's still, everyone wants to be an early pioneer to this stuff, and we're still very much early into it. I think we'll get out of pioneer phase once we get all or most popular legacy automakers doing EVs full time as well, not just Ford, Honda, Toyota, Nissan, GM. Once all these guys are doing it, like it's just as common going to their website or going to a lot or even a CarMax or something. It's just as common to see an EV as there is to see a hybrid, as there is to see diesel. Like, oh, well, here are all these options. Okay, that one. At that point, I think the pioneer phase is over, and then whatever's around when that happens, like those guys will stick around. Anything that things will die in the process, unfortunately, but doesn't it's still exciting. But I just don't know how they're going to overcome it.
Yep. I'm rooting for them, but yeah, trying to be realistic about it too. So we don't know, but Lucid will do something by the end of the year to go merge some with someone else at this point. I don't know, but I just hope they can make Nikola. A car. Yeah, that's a great idea. There you go.
What could go wrong?
Nothing.
Probably my biggest interest over the next couple months for Teslas, apart from the Semi, is how the first Model Ys out of Texas are going to be. Like how they're going to price those
coming?
in the
I
lineup.
haven't seen
and
any
what the
news
range.
about that. When are those coming?
Should be by the end of the year if things
Weren't they
remain on
supposed to be,
track.
like,
I mean,
by
they
May? What was the delay there?
That's Berlin.
Oh, that was Berlin.
Berlin was shooting for June, and there's so much paperwork and politician holdups that it's been pushed back a lot. They're still hoping Berlin will be active by the end of this year, but it's behind schedule now officially. Texas is not. Texas is on schedule and on track to produce vehicles before Berlin does, which is funny because Berlin has had more time to work on this factory. It says a lot about the German registration process of getting factories online and building permits and all that. But I'm pretty convinced Texas is going to come online first, and the Model Ys out of that are going to be the first like next generation ones with the new batteries and the structural pack, and that'll be the first time Battery Days announcements are making its way into consumer products since Plaid Plus isn't happening. So, or if the Semi deliveries begin by the end of this year, I guess that would technically use 4680s. But there's so many ways they can take it with the range. Like, do they want to match range or do they want to blow past all those range expectations and go above 400, or do they just want to keep it around the same, or do they want to make it slightly more? Like, I'm curious of your guys' predictions of what makes more sense to you.
For the Plaid?
For the 4680 Model Y range, when that comes out, which is supposed to be in the next couple months. It's not that far now.
I don't know if I care. It's not the Cybertruck.
Oh my goodness.
Get off, Nick! We can't take it anymore.
Silly Nick.
What affects a Cybertruck?
There are surprisingly 0 Cybertrucks down at Starbase, which is kind of sad.
That's true. How about you, Randy?
About Cybertruck? No, about the
No.
4680s.
The 4680s.
Does no one want to answer the question?
No,
We'll do something else.
I don't.
Well,
Fine.
Long pause.
because the thing is,
Considers life's choices.
no.
Wonders why he's talking to us dingbats.
The 4680s. No. I
just don't have enough information.
You got to ask a question now, Nick.
I don't.
You can shoot down mine. So ask everyone else a question.
Okay, so Mr. Drew.
No.
Yeah.
No, all right. Randy doesn't even want to answer my question. At what point will Cybertrucks be so ubiquitous you'll find them at a used car sale?
No.
No.
Okay.
I refuse.
Cool.
I refuse
Randy,
that.
your turn.
All right, my turn. My turn to ask the question.
2025.
2025. Okay.
No, it's my turn to ask the question. Drew, when do you think the 4680s?
When?
Yeah.
I think they're on track for this year.
Do you?
If
Is
they're
that the ones
building
coming out of
the
Cato
factory,
Road or out in Austin?
both.
Both? Okay.
Texas's cell facility is up, and they're loading equipment into it now, and they have paperwork lined out for. In Berlin, they have paperwork lined out for how the facilities and mass production of the cells will go. So, if they're willing to put steel in the ground and start construction on things, they clearly have a certain configuration ready. They have a certain layout planned, and they're building it. So if that remains on track and Giga Texas keeps being built at this rate, then yeah, they'll probably be. Well, they already said Model Y will be coming out of Texas later this year, and they're going to use 4680. So I'm guessing sometime in the fourth quarter.
I'm guessing
We'll get them out
next year.
Go ahead. They'll be
Next
late.
year? Okay.
I do think next
Okay.
year.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
gonna side with Randy and say early next year, like probably February through April timeline of next year. I think
A couple months late.
I think they're close with it, but again, it's all about that machine that makes the machine. Having the I think Elon on Battery Day talked about a factory line that doesn't stop the product; it keeps moving, and getting machines to work consistently, accurately, with no downtime on a whole assembly line is extremely difficult. And so I'm optimistic, but I also want to be a little bit more realistic and say, probably not this year in either Cato Road or Texas for at-scale production, but probably really early next year.
Interesting. My reasoning being is that I look down and we're about to hit August. I'm like, oh my god, it's August.
Mm-hmm.
Like the machine making the machine's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Mine is strictly just calendar based. Like, oh no, not yet. Just next year. I think early next year for like first quarter easy. But I just looked down. It's like it is literally about to be July. I mean August, and it's
Yeah.
Randy, it
see
is
even there.
July.
It's like I can't wrap my head around that. So I'm like, ooh, next year. 2021 zipped by like it wanted to get so far away from 2020 that's like we gotta get away from that. We are 5 months out of the year, and I just don't feel 5 months will have everything ready. I predict there's
But 7 months.
So
That's different.
So you know how I always like anticipate like why do I always whatever the timeline is I always push it out further. I had a thought about this like why do I always assume the worst? Tesla, and I'm talking about Tesla. Tesla means well with their schedule, but there's so many external factors that they can't control that just inevitably offset something for everything. The only exception I say is that Tesla's hands is software stuff. That one is like, okay, software-wise. But outside of software, Tesla can only move so fast when they're trying to get, for example, approval for permits in such location and stuff like that. Get how quickly you can get something up and built. Like there are things that Tesla just can't control. I feel like the economy or the government or however we want to label it is designed to move slow on this stuff because Tesla is still behaving like a startup. And startups move quick because they're small. But at one point, you're not a startup, really. And I don't think I wouldn't classify them as a startup anymore, but they behave like a startup.
No.
They talk like a startup. They just randomly blurt things out like a startup. And that's great for the culture. That's great for motivation, inspiring your team and stuff like that. Like, hey, you know, it's a grassroots movement. But it's not a startup. And as you get bigger, it is designed to slow things down, I feel. I don't agree with it. I just feel like that's just what happens. We joked, I think last week, that how quickly do you think they're going to get down to Starbase to be like, we got to regulate this somehow. You can't just do this thing. And they're moving quick like a startup, you know. Great. Nick made a comment that everybody's moving with a purpose down there. Nobody's just standing around. Everybody has a purpose. And something is happening at all times. You're behaving like a startup, which is awesome. So in that sense, you are moving quicker than the government or the economy or whatever the sense is that like there's regulation and all these other external factors. But at some point, it does have to get filtered through that. And I just feel like I have hesitations when new things start to roll out. Once we get the first line of Ys that were pushed out, they're going to deliver like butter. And they're just smooth rollout. Y was so smooth. Granted, a lot of parts for Model 3, so awesome, but that was so smooth during the pandemic. So the government was effectively closed. So that's why they moved quick. And then when they're like, you can't do that, Elon said, screw you, I'm leaving California. And he's like, I will make it legal. So in some ways, there's you have this ambition that correlates with the movements of things, but I just feel like a lot of this stuff, the batteries, which one's going to come online for, like, we want things, the Cybertruck, we want things done when they're saying to the timeline, but even Tesla can't, like, nobody can commit to everything that involves outside approval and things like that. It's hard. So I just assumed I guess where I'm going is I just assumed the worst in our government's scheduling and our timeline. Everything moves slow in the government. So I just assumed that everything will always get delayed because everybody needs to get their cut. Everybody needs to make sure everything's regulated. In terms, rightfully so, safety is important, and that takes time too. I don't diss on it, but I just say it's a very slow process. So early next year, Cybertruck, Wise, or the 4680 cells Wise out of Texas, Berlin, all these things that whatever our time is, I always like to add minimum 4 months, maybe 3-4 months, like a quarter of a year. I would be like, that feels realistic.
So that could be Q2.
Ooh.
That could be.
Yikes. That would be
I have a feeling Cybertruck's going to be very late.
No.
Are you
No.
worried about the Cybertruck?
I'm so worried about the Cybertruck, guys. Oh.
Now he is.
I'm always worried about the Cybertruck, though. That's the funny thing.
We're not worried. It'll be ready when it's ready. But
Make it ready.
I think it's the biggest battery hog out of all their vehicles.
I agree.
Yep. 100%. Yep.
I agree.
Even more than the Semi, because the Semi's in low volume. Cybertruck's high volume and high battery capacity.
Yep.
And that's
And
probably
kinda
going to
low
be
margin.
what dictates. Yeah,
When you
we're not sure.
well,
It's probably low.
when you compare it to the semi, or $250,000 for twice as many battery packs as a $80,000 semi or a Cybertruck, that doesn't add up.
Yeah, I think it's more than that. It's going to be like 800 kilowatt hours or
Oh, it is? Okay.
something
All
like
right.
that. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. But the Cybertruck will probably be definitely after 4680s are pumped up for Model Y. And I just think that Tesla has now built 2 factories that are mass producing Model Ys as we speak. So they've kind of got that one down. So now that they'll be finally revving up the 4680s, they're going to want to test it on something that they've got down and that there's already a lot of demand for, which is the Y. So I think that's their guinea pig for Texas. They know that they're going to sell everyone they can make, and it takes physically much smaller packs than the Cybertruck does. So you can sell a lot more vehicles per battery. Whereas the Cybertruck, they got to find a way to get 500 miles in a 70K package, which I still wonder how they're going to do. But they're probably going to wait till the yields and everything are all figured out. But I have to imagine Cato Road is close. I rewatched Battery Day the other day, and they said that they expected Cato Road to be around 10 gigawatt hours within a year. And we're coming up on that 1 year mark. I guess it'll be September, which means that they must be somewhere around 10 gigawatt hours of 4680s just from there. I think most of them will either be shipped or put in the semi, but they've got some experience with it now. I hope they talk about that on Monday. Some updates with 4680s, or if things are going to get pushed back, better to let us know now rather than later. And they're already building the cell plant in Berlin for where batteries will be built there. So I feel like if you're putting stuff in the ground, you must have something figured out. I can't imagine that they're running into major issues with 4680s and they can't figure them out. But let's build the factory for them over here anyway. Like, it just
Again, I
doesn't
think
make sense.
it's the fine tuning thing. I think they got everything figured out technically before Battery Day.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, we can make these, but we can't make them fast right now. It's the getting. What was Elon saying? Like, I don't know. It was like 1,000-foot plant or something like that. I don't know. Like the assembly lines were linear and they're very long. I haven't watched that presentation in 10 months, I guess. But
I don't remember the.
It's like a very. It's a very
shorter.
But like you got to have each piece of equipment doing its job in the right order and having them all go at the same pace, which is not easy, you know. And if there's one little hiccup in one little place, then the whole line stops. And that's how assembly lines work, but that's why it's so tricky to get right. That's why it takes so long. And so I think Tesla, before they did Battery Day, had a good idea on they knew exactly what they were making, but they also had a good idea of how they were going to implement it at scale. And this whole year has been them ironing out all of those little kinks. So I still think early next year is the best case scenario, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny because we're really not talking very different timelines. I'm saying fourth quarter. You're saying first quarter. We're talking about a couple weeks could be the difference between
someone buying someone else lunch.
I can't hear Randy.
Oh yeah, because I was like, I'm thinking 6 months from now.
Oh, okay.
Like 6-7 months is for me. I mean, that just happens to fall first quarter. But
And I'm thinking 5.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point,
I'm thinking like 5 and 6 months.
6 months.
Somewhere in there.
A lot gets done in 6 months. A lot gets done in 4 months.
Oh yeah. Lots of stuff.
It's very possible we'll see it in 4 months, which I hope. But
me too.
I always you need that buffer room. 6 months feels like an appropriate buffer room. You
6
know,
months
I'm
and 2 weeks.
I think what I'm doing is I'm anticipating what's going to happen on the call, and I'm just like, they're going to justify this. Maybe this will be a setback. They'll say this is going to happen, but then, I don't know, like I'm anticipating a conversation that hasn't happened yet. Yeah.
You think it'll be business as usual, or will there be any particular announcements?
I told you I'm
delays?
going to keep some hope in this team and say I hope that they talk about Cybertruck. I hope there's going to be an announcement.
I hope so too. That would be lovely, especially on windshield wipers. We need those as soon as possible. Let us know, especially in Starbase.
Yes,
they need all that rain.
bro.
All that-
It's got to be
all that
prepared for
sand.
that.
Just all the sand.
Bugs.
Nick, tell me how much better your Starbase experience would be if you had a Cybertruck.
Gosh.
What would change from now?
How can you measure perfection? I mean,
Inches?
no, I was thinking in like kilometers, but okay. Yeah, it would be actually the experience would be more comfortable, right? Because I'm car camping, and so I'd have the whole back of the pickup truck bed. It would really only be extremely comfortable though if you could access the vault via the cabin without having to get out, because I've had a huge problem with mosquitoes, and like there's just swarms of mosquitoes down there trying to get you, and so having the sleeping arrangements be contained and accessible within other parts of the vehicle is important. And so anyway, assuming that was the case, it would be absolutely amazing because I'd have like 4 times the amount of space. I'd be in a Cybertruck, and like if Elon was ever like, oh, so we're gonna launch something and we need like a mass simulator, I'd just be like, have my truck. Put it in space, Elon.
Yeah, they need a random guy's truck. They can't use
Yes,
their own.
no.
The-
SpaceX
need
is
a
just like,
volunteer.
we don't have the budget. Yeah,
And that'll be really cool because you're like, my truck's flying through space, but also now I don't have a truck.
that's okay. I'll sell tickets to visit my truck before it launches, and then I'll
There
then
you
I'll
go.
be able to buy another Cybertruck.
You'd
It's
probably
going to have
sell-
a
yeah.
dedicated
Everyone can
pin
sign
on
it.
the maps to go Nick's
There you go.
truck.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I'll even let you sign it for $1.
Oh, I remember what I was going to ask. The
No.
auto shift functionality from the S and the X
Yes.
is going to come to the 3 and
Yes.
Y if you have full self-driving.
Yes.
Could you see yourself using that, Randy?
Wait, it's going to come to the 3Y if?
If you have FSD, yeah.
Which you do.
Which I do.
So you're gonna have the
So-
forward and back auto.
That feature will come to your 3.
Oh, the swiping?
Yep.
No.
No, the auto,
Not
the
the swipe,
auto
the-
forward and backwards.
So you get in the car, you put your foot on the brake, and it goes, oh, you want to go backwards. Because there's a thing in front of you.
If it gets it
Auto shift.
I suspect it's going to be off for a while if it has to learn my behaviors. And that's how I took away Elon's response to that. It's gonna have to learn my behaviors. So I suspect it's gonna be off for a while. So I think I wouldn't be using it for like a month or something like that. Let it figure out how I drive, because
I don't think it does, to be honest.
so
From what I've seen, it's pretty spot on. Like even if someone stands in front of the car, it can figure that out.
But so my thing is parking lot, open parking lot, and I get in my car, and my exit's that way. I want to drive forward and cross over these white lines. I wanted to do the thing you're not technically supposed to do. Will it know I want to drive forward, or will it back up, do its thing, and do all this extra steps that I have no interest in? Stuff like that. My habits is that I will be, not aggressive, but I'll be like, I'm just gonna drive over these lines, whatever. It's a parking lot. The dividers don't control me, so I'm just gonna keep going.
I'm not sure because it doesn't look at lane lines now, so
Yep.
it might just go forward if it sees that it's open in front of you.
My other
What if-
other example would be, in regards to movement. If I go to a intersection and I realize this is something I've experienced here. I'm at this intersection and it put me in a lane that I'm going to be turning left, and I put myself in that lane, admittedly. But leading up to that lane, I did not know that I was going to go left. I need to go forward. But I'm at a stop. Okay, I'm at a stop. The light is there. I'm in a turning lane, but I meant to go forward. I need to get over, and I have an opportunity to get over pretty quick before cars show up, or maybe I have to wait until they pass. But my thing is, can it correct my movement then in that sense too? Now, if it's auto, ideally FSD is going to keep me in the right lane right from the offset. However, there's this turnpike that when I do this roundabout, get off, you have to get over to the next lane immediately, and it's very poor design. you have to get over immediately. Otherwise, you're going to make an immediate right turn into this section that you're not supposed to go into. And then you have to navigate and get through all this stuff. And I have tried it. You know, FSD will come off 3, 2, 1, boom, 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 take me out right as I need to get over anyway. So I don't know how it would respond to that. But I have to drive it kind of aggressive to just cut over a lane real quick. If there's incoming traffic, my anticipation is I have to slow down on this turnpike to let them pass so I can get over. The cars behind me know what I'm doing. The car in front of me would be probably doing the same thing. Can my vehicle understand something like that? This is where I question overall, like driving forward, driving back, making left, like things that I need. Because what we're asking is like, can you anticipate this next thing that needs to happen? In current status, no. But I hear everyone who's having the beta right now, real beta, it's significantly better, and that's cool to hear. I wonder if it can understand. I want the confidence that it can understand context, because that matters about the behaviors of all the other vehicles around me as well. So if it has to learn my behavior, I give it a month, and I'm sure I can see myself using it. Right from the offset, I think I would be just too nervous, the same way I was nervous right when I started using FSD the first time. I would just be like, oh, really hyper attentive to everything. And if it doesn't require learning, if it takes all this data that it's been doing, not just to my car, but every other car for the past couple of years, then great, you know, like, let's have at it. It's worrisome when I'm the only Tesla in my area, so I don't know how much data is being documented in these spots. San Diego, not even a worry. Rural spot, yeah, no, I might have some concerns.
What were you gonna say, Nick? You were about to answer.
Yeah, I'm all for that. The idea of moving that kind of more premium feature down the range. And I think it's a really cool example of how all Teslas get better over time, where every other vehicle in the world gets worse over time. And it's just so cool to be able to say, hey, when I bought this car in 2018, it didn't do this. And now it does. And not only does it now drive itself, it also, I don't have to tell it which direction I'm going. And it's just so cool. So I appreciate that the trend's there. Now, it's not as applicable to me, Cybertruck, and not owning a car right now. Or
You'll have to use auto shift.
I'll have to use auto shift because there's no stock. But I guess I'm thankful that Tesla is continuing the trend of keeping their vehicles updating over time and not allowing them to die. Because I saw an article a couple weeks ago about the old Model S's that were using 3G networks and how they were going to lose connectivity. And I'm like, that is kind of sad. Like, you're buying a $120,000 car and then having the 3G network be too old to continue connecting. So, you know, I can see why that is apprehensive for some people, where they're like, I wouldn't want to buy a Tesla because, you know, it's not going to last for 30 years or whatever. And that's true, but there's going to be retrofits, or you can just use hotspot. You know, you can work around it if you want to. And I would hope that Tesla will figure out something, you know, some kind of retrofit upgrade that old Model S owners can do.
I hope so. That would be nice.
You know, it's just a new radio basically is all it is. You know, maybe you need to get a whole new MCU or whatever, which is expensive, but
cheaper than a new car.
Cheaper than a new car for sure. Exactly. And at the end of the day, like, the car lasted, how many years it's been since 2012? 9 years. Yeah. So it's either buy $2,000 MCU upgrade or get a whole new car. Yep. I'll take the MCU upgrade every 9 years. Exactly. So I'll have to buy a new MCU. It's still worth it. And so that's just what I mean, though. Like, the fact that Tesla's still showing that they're willing to have their older cars be updated in ways that only the new ones are marketed as, right? So when we saw the Model S Plaid, we were like, oh, wow, cool feature. And then like, oh, wow, it's not going to be on Model 3, Model Y. That's cool. Let's keep that trend up, Tesla.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's an easy one too, because it just uses the cameras, and I don't think you have to worry about the context as much as the driving, because that's more lane marking stuff. Whereas this is mainly, is there an object in front of me?
Yep.
If there is, reverse. If there's an object behind me, go forward. And that's the bulk of the feature, which is why I think it'll work really well, and it won't take much learning.
And behind you.
It won't go.
When I was talking about like I
drive
don't
and reverse
question
drive, reverse drive,
when I was mentioning I don't question Tesla's like vision on execution would be a thing. I wholeheartedly believe when Elon says input equals error. Anything that gets rid of that, I do have.
You just get in the car.
I have faith.
You go.
That's his thing. You just sit down and it knows where you want to go. How? You know what I mean? No, I'm not like, yes, I do want to know how, but like, you just.
You probably don't want to go that way.
Yeah. If it goes boom, boom.
I think that's the majority, right? That's where we all start, is the garage before we leave.
Well, and Tesla
a real
has
easy
GPS
one.
data, so they can learn, okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're in your garage at your home, so you always back out. Let's start there. You're at work.
And you're not going forward.
Exactly.
We know that. To me, it's a painfully obvious one, especially the garage. And most parking situations, there's typically something in front of you too. So I feel like the 90% of the scenarios it would work fine. There'd be a couple where you'd need to override it, but for the most part, it's a great idea to just. The car should know this. I don't need to tell you.
Yep.
You're aware of where you are.
I want the Tesla app to communicate with my other apps in my phone. I want that because if it and here's another sense of context that I just would like to happen. If you guys text me in the scenario we're all hanging out or we're close enough to meet up, you're like, all right, hey, we're heading over to Olive Garden. We'll be there at 3. Okay, cool. I'm on my way.
I didn't agree to Olive Garden.
I don't like Olive Garden.
Go ahead.
I just make it. I don't know. I'm just trying to find something universal, man.
I know. I'm making it hard for you.
Go ahead.
All right, fine. We're going to McDonald's.
Ew.
I say ill too, but Drew is so happy. Go to McDonald's. Okay. We'll be there at 3.
In-N-Out.
Great date, right? So now we're going to
Can
McDonald's.
we get In-N-Out?
Yes, I'd love to
fine.
do In-N-Out.
We're going to the Apple store. The point is,
no,
we're texting. You see this happening, and much like there's a Siri suggestion that happens afterwards with stuff like this. I would want that type of integration. I think I want Siri suggestions to communicate with Tesla app or whoever's got to do that part. So that way Tesla app knows that's a thing. So when I get to my car, the cabin's already cooled down. I didn't preemptively cool down the cabin.
Yeah.
And when I get in my car, it knows I'm trying to meet at said McDonald's or Apple store or what have you. That is something where there was no input required. And it just knows because of the context of a communication that's happening. So I think that's
it's a privacy thing.
It is. It's 100% a privacy, and that's why I don't think it's. That's my dream vision of no input. Is that you just know? But I want that to do that with my phone. I want that with everything because if you're gonna be AI about it, and if I have to release some privacy information where things cross communicate like that, then let's make it work. And it's all about context at that point. But it requires the collaboration of Apple and Tesla, and those guys just seem to really hate each other.
Yeah, they hate each other.
Don't know why.
Out
of 2 companies in the world that should be best buds.
I know. They have so many similarities too. Ugh. It's a shame. But I don't mind having to tell the car where I want to go as long as I don't have to drive it.
I think even eventually though, Drew, you'd get tired of telling it where to go. Just be like, Neuralink should just know where I want to go. Let's
start with the driving. We'll start with that.
Okay, fine.
Because that's hard enough. Then figuring out where I want to go. We'll figure that out. But the driving itself part, I'm sure it's tricky. Yep. Anyway, I know Randy's got to go, so hopefully his car knows where he's going.
Yeah, I'm not taking my car.
You're not taking your car. Oh yeah.
Because it knows it knows you're not coming with it, so it knows it's staying put.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you have an excellent week.
Miss you, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Bye.